we're just talking, Jimmy, about the on-stage fight between Perry Farrell and Dave Navarro at James Addiction. And you're going to be thinking about the best scraps you've seen on the pitch between teammates. Now, I want to start with Craig here because Craig's regaled this story numerous times, but this might be the first time for our YouTube audience. The infamous one between Isle Berkovich and John Hartson. If you haven't seen this, actually, JC, maybe you can look it up and we can roll it in. It's on YouTube 3 bajillion times. I forget what year this was, Craig. What was it? 99, around there sometime? You're at West Ham still, obviously.
Yeah, I want to say 2000, 2001.
Oh, was it?
It might have been 99.
No, you'd left by then, hadn't you?
For me?
When did you leave West Ham?
02.
Was it 02? Oh, I guess it would be. I guess you know more about your career than I do.
Well, I should.
Whether you remember it. Okay, regale the story, Craig, because it's a classic.
Yeah, we generally wouldn't have media cameras at training, but the day before a game, and remember we were playing Monday Night Football game, so it was a Sunday, and Sky had their cameras at the training ground, and we were playing a small-sided game, and Harry was doing this thing which he usually did when there was cameras there. Otherwise, he wasn't doing shit.
And what was his thing? Because you talked about it on Friday night.
He'd just come in and be pointing and making it look like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, and he'd be pointing everywhere for the cameras and everything else. And
he was performative, right? Like he's
very. Yeah, it's like, where have you been all week? So anyway, long story short, he was actually winding up. I think we were hammering the other side in a small-sided game and telling the guys to get stuck in, and then Isle Berkovich nutmegs John Hartson. John Hartson just decides that nope, not having that, and 2-foots him from behind. It just absolutely goes through him. And Isle's like 120 pounds. John Hartson is a fucking rugby player. And now John Hartson standing over top of Isle, and Isle just kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? He kind of throws a punch at his leg, kind of just a tap, like, what are you doing? And then John's like, oh, you hit me. So he takes a step back and boots him right in the head.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Isle was swollen up from, there we're going to show it on here. Here we go. There you go. He's going to pick him up. Oh, there's a little punch, and then there's a boot.
Right in the
wow.
kicked him in the face.
Yeah. Kicked him right in the face. He was swollen from his
pet
chin
value.
right to his
We
ear.
treat your pet like our pet.
Well,
Pet value.
it's time for adult food
too.
And there's a lot of great options to choose from.
Yeah.
You're
And
looking
anyway,
for
the camera was
sponsors.
just where that camera shot came from was just at my left. Shaka Hislop, who's who we're gonna have on the show tomorrow, actually, was at the other end. He could talk about his angle of it. And then Harry looks over at the camera. I look over at the camera, and Harry walks over to the guys, and they say, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll never see the light of day." And that was kind of the end of that. But it wasn't for another 2 weeks. I was sitting at home, and I was happened to be watching Sky Sports News, and all of a sudden, coming up next, scrap at West Ham United is like, oh my God, it's resurfaced.
It was everywhere.
And then it was I was like, oh, I can't believe it. So it didn't disappear. Somebody must have saw it at Sky and was like, who's sitting on this? And out it went.
22 years later, we're still getting meat off the bone.
Oh yeah.
It's brilliant. So tell me, so do you remember, I mean, was the anger, did it continue? Did Hartson eventually apologize? Did Isle apologize?
Harry got everybody in to stop the training session. Everybody sat around in a circle, and he's like, John, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, he hit me. And he's like, what? What do you mean he hit you? He's like, well, you hit me. I'm not putting up with that. Meanwhile, Hartson's already gone. He's gone in for treatment to have a look at his face. And that was about it. But nobody thought we would ever see that on TV.
Did it just blow over though in the room? Eventually they're fine, because you know how
oh yeah,
blokes
absolutely.
are, right? You know, you throw a punch and then a day later it's forgotten.
Yeah. Him and John
Except
were fine.
Isle Berkovich hates John Hartson to this day. You don't forget those things.
No,
And if you're
not.
130 pounds playing in the Prem,
Yeah.
you're sitting there going, "There's some time I'm going to get this motherfucker back."
Yeah.
Right?
And he was our Israeli Jewish player too, so he looked as though he was getting beat up.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
I know.
Wow. That was. Did it cause any kind of issue in the room, or did you just all laugh at it after the fact?
Oh yeah, you know what it's like, Jimmy. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was killing themselves, really. And Isle was fine about it afterwards. He was absolutely
No, he
fine.
wasn't. I'm talking for
Well,
Isle. He
that's
wasn't
right.
fucking with it.
Yeah, it's easy for us to say.
Yeah.
Great little player, though. Isle was just a genius on the ball.
He played for Liverpool for a very short stint, didn't he?
Was there? I know he's at Southampton.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he came to Liverpool for. Let me look that up. But Dubs, it's funny, right? On sports teams, I don't care whether you're men or women, right? Skirmishes happen in training, and generally speaking, they blow over pretty quickly, right? It is, and not to be too misogynist here, but is that the same in women's football as well, or do you hold a grudge? Because the women that I've known in my life tend to hold a grudge more than the men.
It depends entirely on the person, and I think that that's probably true whether you're a man or a woman, right? Like there are people who are just going to be petty; they're not going to let stuff go. But I'd say within the context of a team, especially as you get to a higher level, anything that happens on the pitch in general, I would say, I mean, then save for a few exceptions, it's left there. And like one of my best friends to this day, Reen Wilkinson, we would frequently get into it, especially small-sided games where we would fight over stupid shit like whose ball it was, like when it went out, or like if I was trying to wind somebody up, like Claire could really wind Claire up really easily. Just if you had, instead of going out for throws, you just had somebody who was like feeding the balls in for like a 3v3 with like small goals or something. And I'd be like, yep, our ball, all bro. And then like it would go to me and Claire would be like, it was our fucking ball. I'd be like, no, it's ours. And like she would just like go right off the ledge. So yeah, I mean, but in general, it was left on the pitch, and that's what you need to do.
Whatever happened to your relationship with those two?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to them in a long time.
By the way, Ayo Bukovic never played for Liverpool. However, Yossi Benayoun did. Another Jewish player,
right.
Who's very similar player though. But Yossi and I were very similar types of players. In my defense, okay, kind of diminutive, very skillful, technical players. But just to clarify that,
yeah,
Well, just say you made a mistake.
I did make a mistake. Yeah,
Okay.
I should have just.
But no one could correct him because it was such
Someone
a
You're
pure reference.
I got it wrong.
Someone's gonna hold a grudge against me, for sure. Jimmy, what's your greatest player on teammate story? On the pitch,
and not the sexual type, please.
Oh, really?
Player on player.
No, there was always scuffles throughout the season. There was always players that would have a fight. I remember Marlon Harewood and Johnson ended up having a fight. They went toe to toe, and they were one of the best pairings at Forrest at the time. And they were both having a great season, scoring goals, and they ended up having a huge fight in the middle of training. But it was actually quite funny. We kind of started laughing at first as they were going toe to toe, and then we kind of realized that they were serious. And I remember the manager, everybody came in and broke the two of them up, and that was it. It was kind of just they had the fight, they separated, and training continued going on. But it was always the way, wasn't it, Forrest? Like there was a fight, scuffle. Everybody came, broke it up, and then it was right. Let's get on with it, and then it was over. But it happened often where guys were having scuffles. I think because you're with each other all the time, you're in the dressing room all the time, you're on the pitch all the time, you're traveling together, you're eating together, you're in your hotels, and sometimes it just you have enough of each other, and you get a little bit sick of one another, and these scuffles break out. But you never hold grudges with it. You have your little scuffle, your fight, and then you move on.
Yeah, training's very competitive at times too.
Yeah, it is
really competitive.
Yeah,
I remember when I was 16, when I first went over there, and the coaches are like, "Okay, we're gonna have a North v South game." I'm like, "Okay," so they're like, "Well, So they put me on whoever didn't have the goalkeeper. If the goalkeeper's from the north, I'd be playing for the south. And I didn't think much of it. And then all of a sudden, they were just tearing strips out of each other. They're kicking, going over the top of the ball, and the northerners are just having to go at the southerners. And oh my God, I was like, what is this about?
Yeah.
But it's a thing.
That's fantastic. That's like full class issues, right?
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Well, generally speaking, the Northerners, are the less civilized, right? The Southerners in the club are
See, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. But training was always competitive. I mean, you had to train the way that you played, right? The tempo had to be there, and the aggression, the tackles, everything had to have a good tempo in your sessions.
Within reason, right, Dubs? But I mean, there must have been a player that always took it a little bit too far. Was there on the training pitch that took that to, practice like you play? I get it to a certain degree, right? But you're not going to go over the ball on someone because they piss you off in practice, generally speaking. Or are you? Were you that person, Dubs? Did you take it too far?
No, I mean, I maybe took it too far sometimes in terms of like competitiveness, but everybody else was right there. But I remember sometimes, and given kind of the context of the national team and getting together and sometimes together for really long stretches, like Forrest is talking about maybe like preseason and things like that, and players being pitted against one another. Like sometimes we'd be separated based on your province and playing like a 4v4 with Walls game or a 5v5 with Walls, which was like the best game ever. Everybody got up for it. But then sometimes that would like bring out like regional stuff or like chip on your shoulder stuff. Like the Quebec players are only physical. They're not highly technical. And we'd be playing the Ontario or the BC players. And it was orchestrated by the coaching staff to manufacture a high level of competitiveness. Right. And then, but I just had my blinders on and going in and I mean, not looking to hurt anybody, but that would definitely ratchet up the intensity. But then sometimes when it would get, but it was always, I don't want to say respectful, if that's the right word, but I mean, it was always just on a knife's edge. Like it was always just on that line. And sometimes through a clumsy tackle or an ill-timed one, then it would maybe bleed into dirty, but nobody was ever trying to hurt anybody. But you would sometimes get a player come into that kind of nucleus of players who had been with the national team for a long time, looking to prove themselves. And then sometimes they would come in and maybe be like a U Sport player and done really well in university, but not quite there at the level, couldn't play as well, couldn't play as quick, speed of play wasn't there, technique wasn't there, but they were going to hack the shit out of you to prove a point or to get themselves noticed. And then you would hear like the rumblings kind of go into the team and be like, this fucking girl's out of her mind, right? But like, you kind of had to respect it because she was willing to take that risk and maybe be hated off the pitch, but wanted to somebody to sit up and take notice in terms of the coaching staff, right? But then the players would let her know pretty quick if that continued into the next training session. Be like, you need to get a hold of yourself because we're gonna hurt you if you keep doing this because somebody's gonna walk off injured here. So it's always about like collectively noticing what you need to do as a group and what the coaching staff wants to pull out of you, but then making sure that everybody is doing something. Everyone's going to walk off of their own volition and not have to be stretchered off the pitch. Like that's what you don't want it to get to.
Wasn't it Nicholas Anelka or was it Vieira at Arsenal? His first training session, he 2-footed Arsene Wenger.
That's right.
I forget who was it, Craig? It may have been Anelka actually. He was so keen to impress, and some little scrimmage, whatever, and the coaches were joining in. And he just went 2 foot and just wiped out the coach.
We used to have that. You remember the Les Wilson, Jimmy?
Yeah.
He was the manager.
I remember Les too. He used to run laps around the training pitch when we were practicing.
That's right. Yeah, he was the fittest man in the world. He really was. But he was also a little bit crazy. So we were playing a 5-a-side. He joins in, and he was like 2-footing people.
Yeah.
It was like a day before a game. It's like, Les, he only knew one way to play. He got subbed off at Wolves years ago, back in must have been the 70s. And the manager was questioning his fitness. And so he was on the sideline doing sit-ups and push-ups when he got subbed off.
Was Les the guy with the gammy ankle and his foot kind of turned out?
No.
Who was that?
That was Kevin Muldoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
He could
Brilliant
strike
man.
the ball. I don't know how he did it with his ankle. He didn't even use his laces. He used his ankle.
Kicked with his
But,
ankle.
like,
Put the ankle through it, boys.
you should have seen the way he could strike a ball. It was really incredible.
Really?
It really was.
So that
He
wasn't
could
the plan.
disguise it for fun.
Goalkeepers hated it, right? I bet.
Disguising it.
And he was the goalkeeper coach, and he would just float them in the top corners.
Yeah.
Just so you couldn't get them. It's like, you're the goalkeeper. We're supposed to be able to get them. Yeah.
Was it just from numerous injuries, or one really bad injury?
No, I think he was just born that way.
Oh, really?
Because both ankles were on the
Peter
ground.
anyway.
Now I feel
but-
bad.
No.
No, both ankles were on the ground. It kind of walked like a penguin a little bit.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I feel-
He went through like a pair of boots every
He
week.
had both ankles that way, huh?
Yeah.
Both ankles,
Okay.
yeah. He was
It wasn't
Great
the
guy,
sole
too.
that was worn out,
Super
though. It was
guy.
that little piece under your ankle that got worn out.
yeah.
They looked like little house slippers when he was done with them. The whole inside just kind of carved out.
That's what he did with the old cleats. He brought them home and walked around with them at home.
It's okay
Funny
making
guy.
fun of a
Funny
guy
guy,
who
though.
did it, his ankles through an injury, but if he was born that way, maybe you shouldn't be so.
I tell you what, if he had some pace, he would have been an unbelievable striker.
Yeah. You could
Really, eh?
finish.
So that's amazing,
It's
isn't it?
tough when you're running on your ankles, though.
Yeah.
So he didn't play the game professionally. No.
Oh, hell no.
Okay. okay. Just curious. All right, that's interesting. But just staying with this before we move on to the weekend that was. As far as players and getting in scraps, was there ever a player that just did not get on with anyone? Was just a bit of an asshole, and no matter, because usually there's going to be cliques in rooms. It happens, an occasion, and there's going to be players that fall out with each other. We understand that. We've all seen that at whatever level you play. But was there ever that player that just sat in the corner by themselves, didn't have any interest, wasn't liked by their teammates? And if there was, did they last that long at the team?
I remember a guy called Jimmy King.
Okay.
Jimmy King, his
I
name was.
suspected.
Jimmy
Not
King.
me.
Jimmy King was really quiet, but we found out because he had this massive cock. Actually, that's one of the words we shouldn't say on YouTube. I guess it might get flagged.
No, massive's fine.
Yeah, you can say both.
Okay, Jimmy King's cock. Keep going.
Yeah, and he would be in the corner, and he was really quiet, and he would take his shorts off and throw his towel around, and eventually one of the players said, listen, if you got a small cock, just let everybody see it, but you're like creeping us out. So he turns around and this thing just unfolds. It was like, hold on a minute. And they drag him into the first team's room, and they're like, you got to see this.
Oh, no.
This poor kid. Jimmy King.
And this story was brought to you by Jimmy King's Cock Emporium.
Yeah.
Get your stories here.
Can you imagine though, like being so
my
ashamed?
A large Magnum condom.
Yeah, why are you hiding that?
Jesus, really?
Craig would have been driving around with it with a flag on it.
Yeah. I think Trevor Putney said I'll give you 50 quid to get a little blood in it.
Dubs, there's got to be a similar story in your career.
No, there's not.
What, like a large vagina? You got one hell of a large vagina.
Look at the size of this.
Your
Just
labia
unfolding.
majora is
Oh.
quite something to behold, right down to your knees.
No, there's no comparable.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Back to Jimmy King.
Or Jimmy King
was that-
didn't make
was-
it, though.
Was that Ipswich or where was that?
That was at Ipswich, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I don't
Okay,
know
so
whatever
Dubs had
happened to
nothing
Jimmy
similar.
King.
I'm sure he's
Well,
doing
I'm sure
fine.
he's doing just fine for himself.
Yeah. His girlfriend was tiny, too, so I'm not sure if she's
What are you saying? She's walking like John Wayne now? Well, howdy, partner.
Yeah.
my
Okay,
goodness.
Dubs. Any player that was just disliked universally by everyone? No.
No, never.
Amy Walsh.
No.
Jimmy, A, any big cock stories? B, anyone that was disliked in the room?
No, but I think going back to the fights, I think we all remember this with Lee Boyer and Kieran Dyer. Do you remember that?
Well, I mentioned it about 10 minutes ago, so yeah.
Did you
He
talk
hadn't
about that?
arrived yet. Yeah.
Well, it
Oh,
didn't
he
arrive
wasn't
then,
there.
did I, you
Okay, fair
plum?
enough, fair
Otherwise, you wouldn't have brought it up.
But go ahead.
Yeah,
No, we
that
didn't
was
go
one
into
of the best.
details. It was just I alluded to it.
Oh, you alluded, but you didn't go into
No.
details.
No. So go into details for us.
I thought that was one of the best fights I've ever seen on a pitch. I remember watching the game actually live. The play's going on. All of a sudden, the cameraman's giving one of these. He's kind of looked, went back, and then he goes full on, zooms in, and these two are going toe to toe. And I always thought, if you're the opposition and you're watching two teammates throwing punches, like, do you stop them or you just stand there and watch? I think I would just watch.
What happened? I forget now. Was it broken up by opponents? I can't
Well,
remember.
Opponents, yeah.
It was. Yeah,
Yeah, everybody.
They both
kinda
got
just-
red cards, right? Didn't they?
they both got red carded. Yeah,
Both red carded.
and they were like complaining about it.
Yeah.
It's like,
They're
no,
idiots.
you can't fight. It was like our same teammates. I was like, yeah, well, you can't fight them either.
Yeah.
Was that
They
was
thought
Bobby
they wouldn't get
Robson?
sent off because they were fighting their teammates, which was amazing.
Crazy.
Was it Sir Bobby as manager at the time? I forget now.
Ooh.
I
Was
think
it?
it was.
Yeah. Can you imagine what he would have said, right, Craig? Post match. My
Jeez.
God. That was
He
really
would've-
incredible. That was probably that's what it's also, like you mentioned there, Jimmy. It was on live TV as well, Premier League, like a marquee, match. And these two guys go off.
Yeah, they were
scrapping.
ragdolling each other.
Was it
It
against
was
Man U?
unbelievable.
I think it
It was
depends, though.
against
Jimmy, you're saying if you're a teammate
Villa
or like you
West
just
Ham.
watching that, or the opposition, you're just watching it. But I think instinctively I would go and try to break it up. But then I
Yeah.
guess it depends on, how well liked those guys are. If that's like reminiscent of what happens regularly on the training pitch, you're like, oh, fuck. Like, these guys just need to take their medicine, like get sent off and get the fuck out of here, right? Because maybe their teammates knew that was about to boil over. And they're like, maybe they'll learn their lesson. I don't know if they
Yeah.
ever did.
I'm watching it now. It was Gareth Barry, actually. It was against Villa. Gareth Barry pulled out Lee Boyer aside. Boyer's shirt's all ripped. Shearer's going into his ear there. I remember Shearer was in Canada years ago now doing a little, I think it's an Umbro event. And he was asked about that. And he said basically he thinks maybe there was some issue at the field regarding a girl or something.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure that the field details. But
Predictably.
that was amazing, though. It was.